Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Episode 7 of the anime series Shingeki no Bahamut Genesis. Let me preface this video by saying that there was an episode before this called 6.5, which for all intents and purposes had been a recap episode, just sort of condensing everything that happened between Episodes 1 and 6, respectively, with a tail-end preview of how this episode essentially opened. That being an amassing of Azazel's doing of the demon warriors on Dragonback and giant ogres, making a run, basically an attack on the human castle within which is to be found the god key Amira herself, and it's just absolutely, mind-blowing, this episode. Definitely worth the 2-week wait to finally get to this point. This all-out war featuring catapults and energy projectile power batteries, led by angelic wizards and giant golems versus giant behemoth demon ogres and all this kind of stuff. And of course you have the first sort of verses of the characters Jean d'Arc and Pazuzu, the right-hand demon of Azazel, and it's just a battle of sheer power and force of will between the two. Of course, Jean d'Arc finally does get the upper hand and seemingly effectively takes out Pazuzu. It was kind of a surprise seeing his character to me, as I thought basically he had already been dispatched by Favreau and Kaiser respectively in the previous episode. But of course, as we see, we're picking up right with Favreau and basically Kaiser and Rita still ever searching the kingdom for Amira, who was spirited off in the middle of the night, led away by her apparently air quotes father. Finally, she leaps down from this tall tower overlooking where Favreau has essentially ceased and just looked up at the sky in awe at the battle raging outside the kingdom walls. And this is where Amira pops in and she's like, I finally found my old man. He can't even believe it. He's like, wait a minute, you found your dad? Call him your dad, please, in this kingdom and all this stuff. And she's absolutely famished and starving. She ends up sort of, sweeping off, finding the kitchen and just raiding the place, eating and eating and eating. And finally, when Kaiser and Rita catch up with Favreau, who's kind of watching, mouth agape from outside the little kitchen door, they finally accost her and try to get her away from this food. It's hilarious. She, stops, she drinks a pint, and then she ends up going right back to eating again. Favreau is incredulous. He's like, you're eating more? It was absolutely hilarious. And part of me has to wonder if this is the way by which her demon form regains its power, maybe, because we saw her expend a lot of energy to basically get them away from Azazel in the previous episode, and they found themselves very much in this kingdom where there wasn't a lot of downtime. She was locked off in her own sort of secret room until her father spirited her away, as I say in the previous episode. So now she's got this renewed vigor, but it's still almost purposeless. She doesn't have a focus as yet. She was supposed to be heading toward Helheim, and it doesn't seem like that's foremost on her mind anymore now that she's encountered this man who's at least claiming to be her father. Whether it really is or not remains to be seen. But then, of course, the battle outside becomes a very personal one within those walls as Azazel materializes and wants to take Amira with him. He wants the God Key, which she embodies now, and Favreau and Kaiser both are, these men of honor to a point, and they're not going to have any of it. They're going to basically take on Azazel if they need to. But we also see that Favreau is willing to even go a step further, because of that adversarial rivalry we've seen between Favreau and Kaiser respectively, and now that we know it's all built upon this sort of false ground and misunderstanding and redirected truth at the hands of a demon like Azazel, who is very much integrally involved in the deaths of both of their fathers, we see that Favreau is once again putting on display this selfless attitude, and it's something that even, Azazel calls him on at one point, saying, oh, how noble, to basically give your friend from childhood, this reason to live, and making him think you're the one who led to his father's death. We see that all along, perhaps, their relationship, they cared about each other so much. Basically, Favreau was willing to sacrifice their friendship to give Kaiser a purpose, to give him a goal, to basically keep him going in life. And basically, he's like, look, it's demon versus demon. Kaiser, Rita, take Amira, get the hell out of here. I'm taking this bastard on. And at first, reluctantly though it may be, Rita convinces Kaiser to make off, and of course we have Favreau getting his ass handed to him by Azazel for a little while, but he is holding his own. At least Azazel hasn't offed him from right off the bat. But after time, Azazel's of course becoming very bored with this, and we see that this little sort of smoke grenade gets thrown in through the door, and out pops Kaiser once again. He's decided to help Favreau. They're going to band together, join forces in effect, and try to take this guy down, having this mutual recognition of who Azazel is to them. It's kind of unspoken, and they keep trying to backpedal and say, no, it's basically Favreau who killed my father and all all this kind of stuff. We're going to keep this rivalry going. It's born out of the honor among them, but it's also to basically take jibes at Azazel, who very much gets a sick, twisted pleasure out of being the person who stole the fathers of these two men and ruined their relationship. He gets off on it, and so the best way to get at him is to take that power away and say, no, you know what, Favreau's the guy all along, you're nothing, you're just a measly demon. Pisses Azazel off completely, absolutely works and takes effect on him, and so we have these two men essentially battling it out with this demon who has all these, Medusa-like snakes he's using as arrows. Not since Tulsa Doom have we seen a snake turned into an arrow so effectively. But what I really loved about this whole sort of bait-and-switch battle that's ongoing is at one point they end up outside. Basically Azazel has had enough. He's about to do them in, and you have Kaiser raising his sword and seeing from behind there's this energy glowing, and he knows he's got to, buy some time, so he basically decides to walk right into the oncoming onslaught of Azazel's to buy that time, to keep him occupied and distracted so he won't see the energy blast that's building, about to come and knock his ass out of this plane of existence. And that's exactly what happens. It almost appears as though Kaiser has gotten himself killed because he's basically flung up into the air, and he's probably going to come down to a crash on the ground below or something to that effect. And at that moment we see that Jeanne d'Arc has her weapon poised to attack Azazel, and the energy blast just seemingly disintegrates him. Now, unless he was, teleported out of there at the last second, it seems for all intents and purposes Azazel has been dispatched, much like his right-hand man Pazuzu was in the earlier fight with Jeanne d'Arc, and it's just all kinds of major bad ass. Of course, we see once the battle is altogether seemingly won, by the end, Jeanne d'Arc is asking, what are the names of those two bounty hunters that were involved in all this? I'm wondering if she wants to give them some sort of honorary heroic decree, something like that, because of their participation. And then, of course, we cut back to the gripping hands of Kaiser, who is dangling while Favreau is holding desperately onto his arm, held only by his own demon tail, that kind of thing. And effectively, Favreau has saved Kaiser. Once again, these two men, it's going to be very shocking and surprising to me to see if they completely fall back on their sort of adversarial relationship after all of the revelations in this episode, and all the times Favreau has singularly been responsible for saving Kaiser or giving him purpose and all this kind of stuff. And it's absolutely epic and just poised for the next episode as we finish with Amirda basically seeing once again her father, the Orleans Knight Lavali, I guess is his name, and she's seeking him inside the castle once again, and she's led to the room where essentially Jeanne d'Arc had once told Favreau the absolute pinnacle threat the dragon Bahamut represents. And Amirda looks up and gazes upon this carved stone incarnation of the dragon Bahamut, and her eyes go wide, and these flashes of these horrific scenes of the dragon being enslaved and all these sort of havoc that it had wrought precursor to that, and you see just an inexplicable level of awe or horror on display as she's, realizing what this is standing before her, hovering before her, and what it all amounts to. And the end-all, be-all question I have at this moment is very much echoes one that Rita had posed previous to this, after Favreau or one of the characters had called her essentially a child. Does she comprehend the ramifications of what's going on here? Does she understand what the God Key will be capable of if matched with the Demon Key and all that kind of stuff? Is her father, this air quotes Orleans Knight Lavali, that's claiming to be her father, is this guy a demon in disguise? Is he leading her to hopefully bring back the dragon Bahamut? Is it even meant to maybe imply that the dragon Bahamut is her father in some means, some twisted, otherworldly sense? It remains to be seen, but this episode was just absolutely epic on every scale, and I cannot wait to see where we go from here. So otherwise, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 7 of Shingeki no Bahamut Genesis, if you've seen it, and otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video and that it finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.